This is McCann World Group, a famously American company, you know, the agency of GM and Coke. But we have been in Britain since 1927. And, you know, we're not only the biggest group in the UK, we're also with offices from Leeds to Bristol to Manchester to Birmingham, the most geographically spread. And so the truth about Britain, politically, economically, socially, spiritually, is actually really important to us. And we've been kind of making it a subject of real attention, you know, and love and sort of interest.
Truth Central is our proprietary research and thought leadership unit and an extension of our global strategy capability.
We've done a lot of research in the UK. Our team at Truth Central has been tracking the mood of the nation for 15 years. So to get to the truth about Britain, we developed a multi-pronged methodology, which built on our data set extending back into 2007. Getting to the truth about Britain is quite complicated. We uncovered these deep stories that sort of organize the collective imagination. The Castle Keep is a sense of security and stability, its legacy, heritage, moral fairness, justice, equality. When we look at the Castle Keep, one of the things that we've noticed is that there has been a decline in national pride. Nowhere is this more startling or striking than in this discrepancy between the straight experience and the LGBTQ+ experience. Look at that. Twice as likely that a straight person will be proud to be from Britain than an LGBTQ person.
It's so sad to me that that's the reality. But it's also quite evident in the reporting that I've done over the past few years. I was in Hungary last week reporting on LGBT rights, and people were asking me, how's it in the UK? Like, what's going on over there? We're no longer a world leader when it comes to equality for sexuality and gender identity. So that was a real standout for me.
Inequality is also on the rise. Both men and women report faltering levels of advancement in their workplaces, despite enormous efforts to close the gender pay gap. This is potentially fueled by the uneven impact of the cost of the pandemic. Institutions across the board are suffering from a failure of trust, except for the NHS. There's been an increase in the sense of inequality across the country, especially pronounced amongst Black British respondents. Look at the developments in the second story, the Rocky Boat. What we've noticed this year is a rise in the belief that the future is hopeful and there's some optimism. There is this sense that there is a responsibility of the British people and the British state to spread democracy around the world that has risen, as well as looking after the interests of all humans, particularly those who are persecuted in their own countries.
You know, we're one of the oldest democracies in the world, and I think people, you know, identify with that. But we need to give that a contemporary meaning. And I think also people want to help. People want to show solidarity with people fighting for these principles in Ukraine. And I think we have to find a way, though, for citizens to have that sense of agency, that it's not just a virtue signalling thing that you wear the Ukrainian flag. But actually, you really do something that makes a difference.
The last of the three stories is the field of green. And one of the most visible and evident transformations across our data is the rise of a collective sense of environmentalism and a concern for the climate crisis. There's a huge call for decency in this age of indecency. Headline after headline reverberate with violations of justice, inequality, fairness, and harmony. And our data, the minds show that these violations hold tracks with those headlines, with cost of living, tax evasion, and cuts in public services at the top and front of mind. I'm going to share a bit of an understanding of what decency looks like for Britain.
Listening to people.
Do unto others as you would be done by.
Do the right thing even when no one's watching.
Honesty and respect.
Manners and excellence.
Following your moral compass.
Doing the right thing as permitted by your conscience.
The key takeaway we've taken from our data is that truthfulness is your golden ticket to decency. And that is whether you're a politician or CEO. Fascinating. Immigration as an issue has dropped in sort of the ire of the British people. So that's an incredible development and evolution of the relationship to inclusivity, really. And inclusivity is central to an exercise that we did with our community where we asked them to write a social policy for a variety of sectors. And for all of their social policies that they wrote, inclusivity, accessibility, universality were central to the development of those policies. those were co-created by groups across the political spectrum. So that was very exciting for us to witness.
I want to go a little bit more deeper into the research that I did on Polish migrants and their organizations in 2017, so just after the vote throughout the UK. And we very much found that Brexit was actually a silver lining for them, in the sense that they were, for the first time, they received more recognition from both their neighbors, but also their local authorities, their funding bodies, and there was positive valorization of their work. Because suddenly, especially Central Eastern Europeans, who were more vilified in some of the more inflammatory discourses, were seen as actually being part of this society and part of the landscape of British multiculturalism.
And more interestingly, we see that there is this incredible sense of empowerment coming from our Black British and Asian British respondents, where they believe that it's people like themselves who are most responsible and able to change the world today.
What comes out from the Truth of Britain study is this sense of pride among minorities. And it's also the evolution of British nationalism is that it is becoming progressively more civic. It is becoming progressively more open to newcomers.
And lastly, it's not just about being social and being involved in social issues. It's increasingly about taking a political stance. 1/4 of Brits believe that brands should make political statements. That's doubled since the last time we ran this research. And 1 out of 3 LGBTQ+ individuals believe that to be true.
Taking these insights and learnings, we've actually created 4 categories of behaviour for brands on social. So at the top of our chart, we have leader brands. They start and lead conversations. They have a clear and early point of view, and they communicate through their own channel. Participants, so participating brands will get involved in the conversation as it evolves, but not necessarily lead it. They will take a stance and actively engage. Guests, they tend to get pulled into the conversation. So they're kind of forced into getting involved. They won't necessarily engage. And therefore, what happens is they lose the ability to control that feedback. And then finally, suspect. It's really hard for brands to hide these days. And social is often the place where brands are called out.
There is so much more behind this. But for today, we would like to leave you with an invitation to enrich the stories at the heart of Britain, whether that is through building out greater decency, amplifying joy, or innovating through creativity. Each of these key stories has room for you to play an additive role, and so we invite you to join it.